$12,400 in America, $8,500 in Turkey. That is the cost of one round of IVF, one cycle, not one baby. Dollars every cycle. Today, we follow that number honestly, where the gap is real, where it isn't, and what the brochures leave out. First, the ground rules. This is a cost comparison, not medical advice. We are not doctors, and nothing here is a recommendation about treatment, eligibility, or where to go. Every figure you'll hear comes from publicly available data, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Kaiser Family Foundation, a peer-reviewed study published in the journal Globalization and Health, and the European registry kept by ASRM. Prices are approximate and they change. And one promise for the whole video, we will not tell you that one country gives you a better shot at a baby because the honest data does not support that claim. With that said, let's look at the money. Let's name the number carefully because the headline figure hides a lot. In America, a single round of IVF averages about $12,400, and that is before medication. That base figure is published by the American Society for Reproductive Medicine and matches a peer-reviewed academic estimate. But before medication is doing heavy lifting, add the drugs, add lab add-ons like ICSI or genetic testing, and a single American cycle commonly runs from $12,000 up past $18,000. Without insurance, paying cash, one cycle can land near $18,000 out of pocket. That figure comes from our internal price database, in line with the ranges ASRM cites. The medication alone reportedly adds $3,000 to $7,000. Now Turkey. The medical side of one IVF cycle there ran roughly $2,500 in the same peer-reviewed breakdown, and our internal price database puts it at the same figure today. But that is the medical-only number, and it is not the honest one to compare against because it leaves out the plane ticket. So let's add the trip. In that academic breakdown, flights ran about $2,500, a hotel for roughly 2 weeks, about $1,500, and other expenses around $2,000. All in, an IVF trip to Turkey came to about $8,500. So the honest apples-to-apples pair, because the Turkey figure already includes travel, is about $12,400 in America against roughly $8,500 in Turkey, flights, and a 2-week stay included. That is a real gap of around $3,900 a cycle, roughly a third less. You may have seen far bigger numbers, savings of 70 or 80%. Be careful with those. They usually compare the American cash sticker against the Turkish medical-only price, two figures that don't sit in the same column. If you do line up the American cash price, $18,000 without insurance, against the all-in Turkish trip of $8,500, the gap is wider, a little over half. But notice what we just did. We labeled it, paying cash without insurance. That is the only honest way to use the bigger number. And here's the figure the brochures almost never print. This is per cycle, not per baby. Because IVF does not work every time, many people need 2 or 3 cycles. One peer-reviewed analysis estimated the cost per successful case, the real cost of getting to a baby, at about $48,000 in the United States as of 2016. The single cycle sticker in either country is the floor, not the finish line. So why is one country so much more expensive? 2 honest reasons and one we have to set aside. First, the obvious one. America is the global outlier on price. In that same academic study, most other wealthy countries landed between about $4,500 and $5,800 a cycle as of 2016. Norway around $4,500, Sweden and Italy in the low 5,000s, Spain and Canada under $6,000. The United States stood alone at the top. Turkey's lower medical cost is not exotic. It sits much closer to the rest of the developed world than America does. Second, scale. Turkey built real infrastructure for this. As of that study, it ranked among the top countries in the world for IVF, with more than 120 assisted reproduction centers. High volume tends to pull the price of a procedure down. That is an honest structural reason, not a marketing claim. And here is the reason we are setting aside success rates. You will see Turkish clinics advertise very high pregnancy numbers. We are not going to repeat them because there is no neutral national registry in Turkey the way the CDC tracks the United States. A single clinic quoting its own best number is not the same as a country's verified average. So we simply cannot say Turkey gives you a better outcome. The most honest framing is this: internationally accredited Turkish centers offer comparable credentials, and IVF success anywhere depends far more on age than on the country. If your head is spinning between cycle prices, cash prices, and the per-baby math, we did the boring part for you. There's a free, plain English IVF cost comparison checklist in the description, what each price actually includes, and the questions worth asking before anyone spends $1. No email gymnastics. Now, back to the part the price tags never mention. Here is the single most important thing in this entire video, and it has nothing to do with which country you pick. IVF success is strongly tied to age. The CDC tracks this for the United States, and the numbers are stark. For people under 35, about 43% of egg retrievals led to a live birth. By age 38 to 40, that fell to roughly 19%. Over 42, it dropped to about 3%. Across all ages combined, the national CDC figure was about 37.5% per intended retrieval. Sit with that for a second because it reframes the whole decision. The difference age makes to your odds is far larger than the difference between two countries' price tags. A cheaper cycle that is less likely to work is not automatically the better deal, and a more expensive one isn't either. This is exactly why the per-cycle sticker can mislead. The real question was never just, what does one cycle cost? It's how many cycles might this take? And that depends on you, not the brochure. So why do so many Americans even look abroad? Follow the coverage. In the United States, IVF is something most people pay for themselves. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, only about a quarter of large employers that offer health benefits cover IVF. Some states require fertility coverage, about 25 states and the District of Columbia. But those mandates often don't reach the self-funded employer plans that most covered workers are actually on. The result is a wall of out-of-pocket cost. In one survey, around 12% of women who needed fertility care said cost was the main reason they didn't get it. That is the engine behind every border story in this space. It isn't that care abroad is magic, it's that care at home for millions of people simply isn't covered. If someone did weigh the trip, here's the honest logistics picture, and only the picture, not a how-to. A fresh IVF cycle is time-sensitive and tied to your body's schedule, so it usually means a single trip of roughly 2 weeks, estimated at 12 to 16 days on the ground in that academic cost model, which is exactly why the airfare and the 2-week hotel were built into the $8,500 figure. And there's a real cost the brochure skip, one that doesn't show up on any invoice: continuity of care. IVF isn't one appointment. It's monitoring before, a procedure during, and follow-up after. And when the clinic is 5,000 miles away, that after part gets complicated. Who manages your care when you fly home? That is the honest risk to weigh, not whether the credentials are real, but whether the care holds together across a border and an ocean. So here's the honest picture, both sides on the table. The price gap is real, but smaller than the brochures shout. Roughly a third less for an all-in Turkish cycle than an average American one, about $3,900 per cycle. The cash pay gap is wider if you say the words "without insurance" out loud. Turkey has genuine scale and internationally accredited centers. What no one can honestly promise you is a better outcome, because the neutral data to prove that doesn't exist, and because your odds ride on your age far more than on your destination. The deepest problem here isn't Turkey's price. It's that in the wealthiest country on earth, building a family can cost more than a house down payment, and most insurance simply looks away. A plane ticket is one person's workaround. It was never the fix. You shouldn't have to go broke to feel whole.